The Trump regime's escalating campaign against peaceful progressive activism took a new turn this week as Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem likened the decentralized anti-fascist movement, anecdotally known as Antifa, to globally recognized terrorist organizations such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic State. Speaking at a White House roundtable on Wednesday, Noem described the network of anti-fascist activists as just as dangerous and just as sophisticated as organized terrorist groups.
This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous. They have an agenda to destroy us, just like the other terrorists we've dealt with for many, many years. And today is the day that we have a president that won't tolerate it and will stand up and fight for the American people. So thank you for being here, for being so bold, and for standing in the gap at such a time as this.
The meeting, which included far-right commentators and social media personalities, served as a platform for the regime to amplify its false claim that Antifa represents an organized violent movement threatening national security. Among those attending was Attorney General Pam Bondi, who echoed Trump's previous condemnations of anti-fascist protesters. "This is not activism, it's anarchy," she said. "We can't and we will not let mass terrorists burn our buildings, attack our law enforcement, and intimidate our communities." The roundtable followed Donald Trump's signing of an executive order earlier in the week formally designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. The order and its accompanying fact sheet described the movement as a militarist anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, alleging that its actions include doxing political figures, assaulting immigration officers, and organizing riots. In a statement, Trump called Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. None of this is true. Trump's propaganda move came in the wake of the September 10 murder of the far-right commentator Charlie Kirk at a speaking event in Utah, a killing the president and his allies have repeatedly linked to left-wing extremism, despite the lack of any evidence connecting the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, to Antifa or any organized group. Law enforcement officials have not identified a political motive. Nonetheless, Trump and his supporters have used the incident to justify a broader crackdown on what they describe as Antifa-inspired terror. At Wednesday's roundtable, Trump reiterated his belief that the epidemic of left-wing violence and Antifa-inspired terror had been escalating for nearly a decade. He cited a series of attacks on law enforcement officials that he attributed to Antifa, though investigators have yet to substantiate those claims. Extremism experts and federal law enforcement officials have long disputed the regime's portrayal of Antifa as a coherent organization. Researchers describe it instead as a loose collection of individuals, local activist groups united by opposition to Donald Trump, fascism, and his far-right extremism. Antifa has no centralized leadership, membership lists, or formal structure, and its activities vary widely from one city to another. While some individuals may have engaged in property destruction and street confrontations, the movement as a whole lacks hierarchy, territorial control, and military wings characteristic of groups like ISIS, Hezbollah, the Oath Keepers, or even the Proud Boys. Trump's description of these individuals who oppose him is simply bonkers. Trump's comparison of Antifa to international terrorist networks has drawn sharp criticism from civil liberties groups and counterterrorism experts who warn that the new designation could be used to criminalize legitimate protest and suppress political dissent. Because Antifa is not a formal entity, the executive order effectively grants federal agencies broad discretion to target individuals or organizations engaged in left-leaning activism. There is no such legal category as a domestic terrorist organization, one former Justice Department official noted, pointing out that the United States lacks a federal domestic terrorism statute. While the Patriot Act defines domestic terrorism, it doesn't create a specific charge for it, leaving enforcement largely to prosecutors who rely on related offenses such as conspiracy or rioting. Trump's order, therefore, may have limited direct legal force, but significant political and symbolic implications. For example, it was reported today that a Rutgers University professor who taught a course on anti-fascism was blocked from leaving the US for Spain on Wednesday night, just hours after Trump hosted the White House roundtable highlighting the impact of Antifa or anti-fascist left-leaning activists. Mark Bray, an historian who published the 2017 book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, had taught courses on anti-fascism at the New Jersey University and was attempting to board a plane at Newark Airport bound for Europe when he was informed at the boarding gate that the reservations for him and his family had been cancelled. The professor had said he was moving to Europe after receiving death threats. Turning Point USA activists had falsely claimed that he was a financier for the left-wing movement. "Someone cancelled my family's flight out of the country at the last second," Bray posted on social media. "We got our boarding passes, we checked our bags, we went through security, then, at our gate, our reservation disappeared." Trump has directed all relevant executive departments and agencies to use all applicable authorities to investigate and dismantle any illegal operations linked to Antifa or its supporters. The Justice Department was also instructed to explore the use of racketeering laws against left-wing activists, a move that Trump has publicly endorsed, claiming such activists should be put in jail. The regime's heightened rhetoric against Antifa coincides with a pattern of downplaying threats from far-right extremism. In the past decade, white supremacist and anti-immigrant violence has driven some of the deadliest attacks in the United States, including the 2018 Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, the 2019 massacre targeting Latinos at a Walmart in El Paso, and the 2020 racist shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. Data from the libertarian Cato Institute shows that since 1975, right-wing extremists have been responsible for 391 deaths in the US, compared with 65 linked to left-wing extremists. Despite this disparity, the regime has consistently emphasized the threat of far-left violence while minimizing the impacts of attacks by white nationalists. Shortly after Kirk's killing, the Department of Justice quietly removed from its website a report noting that far-right extremists had killed more Americans than any other domestic terrorist group. Civil rights advocates interpreted the deletion as part of an effort to redirect the national security focus toward left-wing movements. Trump's efforts to label Antifa as a terrorist organization have been years in the making. Since the protests of his first term, particularly the violent clashes between anti-fascist groups and far-right organizations like the Proud Boys, he has repeatedly invoked Antifa as a symbol of leftist extremism. His supporters have used the term as a catch-all label for protesters and activists who oppose his policies. The move also appears designed to energize Trump's political base. Figures such as Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, have framed left-wing activism as an existential threat, describing it as an ideology that celebrates everything warped and depraved. MAGA Republican influencers invited to the White House this week echoed that language, repeating unsubstantiated claims of Antifa violence without presenting verifiable evidence. What practical effects Trump's executive order will have remain uncertain, but its message is clear. The regime is positioning Antifa, and by extension, much of the activist left, as a national security menace. For many observers, that approach reflects a broader strategy of conflating dissent with terrorism, reshaping law enforcement priorities to fit a political narrative rather than the facts on the ground. As the White House leans into its rhetoric of the enemy from within, the gap between evidence and assertion continues to widen, leaving the regime's war on Antifa less a matter of counterterrorism policy than one of political theater. Trump is already trying to brainwash the military to go after the enemy from within. What that ends up looking like is probably what Trump craves: street violence that he can quell with martial law and ultimately cancel all future elections. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show. with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.